and welcome to Lost Gotham TV. This is going to be the first in a series of shorter episodes where I talk about my favorite films in different genre. Each episode I will be discussing a different type of film, and we'll release these maybe once a week or a couple of times a week just to keep things going while we are working on other bigger, better projects. The first genre of film that I want to talk about is science fiction. Science fiction and horror go backwards and forwards for me in terms of what my favorite movies are. I definitely love horror, but in terms of putting together these lists, the sheer volume of science fiction movies that I do like really kind of came prominently to mind. So that's where I'm going to start. Now, I'm not going to really count kind of the big movies that are out there, things like Matrix, Back to the Future, Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars would be my favorite sci-fi movies of all time as a collective. If I had to pick one, it would be Return of the Jedi. But I want to focus on other movies that are maybe not as well known, or a lot of the movies on the different lists, they're fairly well known, but it surprised me talking to people recently. There are people out there who still haven't seen Star Wars, and Star Wars is it's a big thing. So even though to me some of these movies may seem like no-brainers, kind of they're cult classics, most of them, maybe there's some mainstream classics in there as well, but just because I think so doesn't mean that you agree. So we'll look at some different movies, and that's enough rambling from me. Let's get started. The first movie on my sci-fi list is a movie by a director whose work I really enjoy. That's Luc Besson, French director, but he's made a lot of English language American movies, some really good movies. Even if he hasn't made the movies, he's written even more really big budget, interesting science fiction movies, things like Lucy, to maybe smaller things like Danny the Dog, which I think is also called Unleashed, with Jet Li. But the movie that's on my list for sci-fi has to be Fifth Element. You've got a host of great stars, you've got some great production value in there. It's mature enough to be entertaining to adults, but there's relatively little nudity and violence in there, so I think it's actually like a PG-13 movie, so it's suitable for most kids. When I was a video store manager many years ago now, that was a movie that I would put on a loop almost. While I was working around the store, we had the video monitors, and I would just put Fifth Element on. It got to the end, started over, and just watch it again. The second movie on my list is something that was very much from my formative years, my youth. My friends all love this movie. I love this movie. I just learned some interesting facts about it recently, sort of from the writer, through an online article, interview thing that I read, that there was actually sort of sequels and things planned, or at least in the writer's mind he had further stories that he could tell in this universe, and if he ever did get a chance to do that, I think it would be very exciting. And the movie in question is The Lost Starfighter. It's a classic 80s movie that deals with the kind of computer game fanaticism that came out. I mean, it came after movies like Tron, and it was trying to cash in on things like that. The special effects were at the time cutting edge, and again, a great host of stars, makeup, sets, special effects. It's a great movie. I've watched it many times, and I'm sure I will watch it many times on into the future. The third movie on my list is it's on the sci-fi list, even though it could easily fall into other categories. And that's something that I had to wrestle with some of these movies is, where exactly do you put certain things? To use one good example, Alien, it's science fiction, but it's also definitely kind of horror. So that didn't end up on any of my lists because it is such a large entity. I wanted to try to throw light on other movies, and this movie is a cult classic, and it's science fiction, but it's also action and comedy, and it is They Live. And you have Rowdy Roddy Piper, WWF, WWE wrestler from my youth, and you have just some funny writing. One of John Carpenter's more fun films. It's just a great, funny movie that, it's straight out of like Twilight Zone or something classic like that. It's very well made and very well respected amongst the cult film community, and I see no reason to argue with that. It is a great, fun movie. Number 4 on my list is one of the less well-known, I think, probably on the list. I believe it's directed by Catherine Bigelow, who went on to do things like The Hurt Locker, and she's a talented director, and I really respect her work. And this movie is one of the main reasons for that. The movie is called Strange Days. It stars Angela Bassett and Ralph Fiennes. It's got Juliette Lewis in it, a couple other people that you know. The story, it was made in the kind of mid-90s, and it was supposed to be set in 1999 and used the fear of the millennium as a kind of the core of its story, but it's very much kind of a cyberpunk kind of thing, kind of a predecessor to the Matrix in many ways, where it deals with the idea of using equipment called squids that you would put on your head. It would record your brain waves and essentially allow other people to see what you experience. So, it could be dreams or fantasies or things, but it has an excellent opening sequence that is like one continuous shot, and so from a filmmaking point of view, it's very interesting and inspirational. But overall, good story, good acting. It's just a good movie all around. The fifth and final film on my list is probably my favorite. It is definitely amongst my top 5 movies, regardless of genre. So I would say it's definitely my number 1 within sci-fi, and that is Joss Whedon's Serenity, based on the TV show Firefly that only lasted 1 season. It is a great movie. It has one of the kind of aspects that I really like about movies, and that is that it's not just a single story. It kind of has multiple stories threaded in there. The opening sequence tells a story, and then the rest of the movie has its story, and it's layered. You have a great ensemble cast of actors and characters. It is just a great movie, and I am really sad that it doesn't get the recognition that it deserves. It definitely, in cult circles, gets recognition, but as a sci-fi movie, an action movie, as a horror movie, again, it touches on all those bases. It's just such a great film, and one of, if not, Joss Whedon's best. I mean, he's done some great TV shows, great movies, but for me, Serenity is the pinnacle of his filmmaking career thus far, and that includes the Avengers movies, which were all very good, but they don't, for me, have the same emotional kind of impact as Serenity does. It's, in a way, a little bit of a smaller, more personal movie. You know, it's his universe, his creation, rather than the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which builds on a lot of other people's work and visions. So that's it. I won't waste a whole bunch of time. That was my list. If there's anything that I missed, there may be a reason for that. Maybe I don't think it's good, or as good as you may. But feel free to, leave a comment below, even if it's an angry rant about why something should be on there that wasn't. These movies, just my opinion. Hopefully I mentioned something that you haven't seen before, and I'm able to introduce you into a movie, an experience that you haven't gotten to enjoy on your own. And with that said, go out, watch them. If you've already seen them, watch them again. I will see you next time.